Nigeria records 148 new cases of COVID-19, with Lagos, Kano, and Zamfara leading the figures.
House of Representatives engages presidential task force on COVID-19. Government's efforts to contain the disease tops discussions.
Nigeria's Senate to investigate status of 5G communication network and its health implications.
To bring experts together to investigate this matter.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on reaching out to the vulnerable during COVID-19.
Well, the reality of staying indoors for 5 weeks and its associated challenges created a new and uncomfortable lifestyle for many Nigerians, especially daily wage earners as well as micro and small business owners.
And the harsh reality was, however, made a little easier by the support of non-governmental organizations and philanthropic individuals whose efforts complemented those of government at all levels.
And just last week on this program, we discussed the efforts of government aimed at cushioning the impact of the compulsory lockdown on the vulnerable population in the country, as well as the efforts of faith-based organizations that appealed to more Nigerians to extend aid to those who are vulnerable. Now, of course, our guests gave us updates on the areas of intervention, especially in the distribution of palliatives.
And today we picked that conversation this time around with some non-governmental organizations and private individuals who are on the front line in the support for vulnerable persons in Nigeria during this pandemic.
Well, Kirian, you know very well that the challenge faced by Nigeria's most vulnerable populations during the lockdown brought to the fore many salient issues, namely how to identify correctly such vulnerable persons and their pressing needs during emergencies such as we now have on our hands. Plus, of course, the roles of different strata of stakeholders in the public and private sectors during emergencies and the need to adhere to the guidelines provided by the authorities for the distribution of the palliatives.
And the lockdown also exposed a need for strategic planning for vulnerable persons during emergencies and enhanced synergy between state and non-state actors, even beyond the provision of food. Experts insist on a plan to garner resources to strengthen containment, detection and treatment of the most vulnerable in the society, adding that aid to this group of persons should also help enhance economic resilience as well as their recovery from the COVID-19 disease. Well, all these inform our focus on the program today. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live on the network service of the NTA. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Kirian and also welcoming you to the midweek edition of the program. As always, we have our complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. For now, we'll take the highlights of the morning news, and here is our colleague Chimobi Watanaji. Good morning, Chimobi.
Hello, good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good to see you this morning. I hope you're keeping safe. All right, good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to the morning news. The latest figures from the National Center for Disease Control indicate that Nigeria has recorded 148 new cases of COVID-19. Now, the figures released at about 11 p.m. on the 5th of May revealed that Lagos, Kano, and Zamfara had the highest number of cases. And this brings the number of confirmed cases to 2,950. 400 cases have so far been discharged with 98 deaths. In the meantime, the House of Representatives during plenary engaged the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in its bid to get details of current state of affairs on federal government's effort to contain the ravaging disease and the health crisis in Kano State. Members of the Presidential Task Force had a session which lasted more than 4 hours with the lawmakers.
This present crisis has laid bare the fundamental weaknesses in our system of law and policy and left our nation at risk of devastating outcomes on all sides.
What is the standard of ventilators per capita that every nation is supposed to have?
How far inwards are we looking with regards to indigenous treatments?
The Presidential Task Force is working in collaboration with other structures set up by the President to ensure that there is a well-rounded national response.
That was the National Assembly. Now, in addition to technical support to Kano State government towards effective control of community transmission of COVID-19 in Kano, the federal government has released sets of ventilators, oxygen concentrators, ambulances, and a consignment of protective equipment to the state government. The presentation was made to Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje by the team lead ministerial task team on COVID-19.
It is embarking on a study which we were very, very pleasantly impressed and surprised that the state had already gone ahead to do a post-mortem verbal autopsy, and the result is not out.
The bottleneck that we used to have that was preventing our own capacity for the challenges we have here in Kano, that bottleneck has been removed.
And away from health matters now, the presidency has formally confirmed the receipt of $311 million stolen from the citizens of Nigeria during the Abuja regime. In a statement, the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, says the funds have already been allocated and will be used for the development of infrastructure like the Second Niger Bridge, the Lagos-Ibadan and Abuja-Kaduna-Kano expressways, which will create tens of thousands of jobs in the construction sector and hone local skills. Now, part of the funds, the presidency explains, will be invested in the Mambila Power Project, which, when completed, will provide electricity to some 3 million homes, comprising over 10 million citizens of the country. And Garba Shehu says monies returned last year from Switzerland, which amounted to $320 million, are already being used for the government's free school feeding scheme and stipend for the millions of disadvantaged citizens and grain grants for those in severe hardship. Now, as Nigerians observe the 10th anniversary of the death of former President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, President Muhammadu Buhari has extolled the virtues of the leader who served as governor of Katsina State for 8 years. A statement by the senior special assistant to the president, media and publicity, Garba Shehu, indicates that President Buhari describes President Yar'Adua as unarguably a patriot because of his passion for the masses and his reversal of policies he believed were hurting ordinary Nigerians. President Buhari urged Nigerians to emulate the deceased's patience and gentle nature in order not to introduce rancor into the nation's politics, where opponents receive each other as enemies. Now, the president extends prayers and goodwill to late Yar'Adua's family, Katsina State government, and prays for Allah's continuous blessings and comfort to his soul. Now, the Senate is to investigate the status of 5G network in Nigeria and its technological impact on Nigerian citizens. Now, the motion calling for the investigation highlighted the uncertainties surrounding the health implication of the 5th generation network.
Several countries, including Switzerland, has placed an indefinite moratorium on the use of 5G network because of health concerns.
To bring experts together to investigate this matter.
All those things he said are supposed to be allegations. They cannot be said with finality. Otherwise, there will be no need for investigation.
And as the world battles with the COVID-19 pandemic, the life-saving importance of clean hands has never been more prominent, and the 2020 World Hygiene Day draws attention to the need for Nigerians to do this regularly to stay safe and from the deadly coronavirus pandemic.
People need to modify their behavior, make it a part of their life, and habits of washing hands, not necessarily being pushed by government or by stakeholders and partners, but for people to take personal responsibility.
It shows that the very little things matter medically. You can take all the treatments, do all the drugs, do all the tests, see all the doctors you want, but at the end of it, the basics of human life, human health depends on hygiene.
And those are the news highlights for this morning. Good morning, Nigeria, on reaching out to the vulnerable during COVID-19. We'll continue with Kingsley and Kieran immediately after this break. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji. Good morning.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now it's time for business news, with the federal government seeking to amend the 2020 budget to assume an oil price benchmark of $20 per barrel. We now join our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye, for details of the story.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, at a web conference tagged Citizens Dialogue Session on Government Fiscal Policy Response to COVID-19 Pandemic and Oil Price Fall, put together by the Partnership on Fiscal and Land Power, said amending the budget at this particular time is imperative. The minister said the budget will be cut and the initial assumed oil price of $57 per barrel will be reduced since global crude oil price have fallen. She also disclosed that Nigeria is in talks to defer debt service obligations to 2021 and beyond, describing the talks as that of rescheduling with lenders rather than debt forgiveness. About 2 trillion naira stimulus is to be injected into the economy through plans that include 1 billion naira from the IMF facility procured last week, which is to be distributed to states, as well as $150 million from the Sovereign Wealth Fund also to be injected. In another development, some businesses are picking up after the 5-week lockdown of FCT Lagos and Ogun states, which are economic hubs of the country. Going from this development, an investment promotion expert, Ogbonna Okuku, says gainful engagement with subnationals in reshaping the economy should be the focus of the federal government.
Has to be a direct focus or refocusing of the economy from oil to manufacturing, and if you must do that, there has to be your raw material supply strategy has to be watertight. It has to be properly aligned with the industrial revolution that has to happen within the next 6-7 months.
And next are the details of Tuesday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for that business package. Next, newspaper review.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Achorebe, as usual, is here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kirian.
Yeah, Bayo, good to see you.
I hope it was a lot easier coming today, because yesterday it seemed better organized than the chaos that we saw around the city, and indeed the other access routes into the city when the lockdown was eased.
Yes, yesterday was better than Monday. Today is likely to be worse because today is the open day for shopping. So the tendency is that people will be out on the street. But this morning, it was gathering slow and steady.
My goodness.
All right. Okay.
All right. Well, we just hope that we're able to manage that.
All right. Let's start the review with the leadership newspaper from top to bottom. Air travelers to pay more over social distancing on board. The story is on page 6. NAV inducts female officer, 11 others into pilot's call. It's on page 7. And now the lead story on the leadership newspaper, federal government steps up COVID-19 fight to build isolation testing centers in 36 states. It has several riders to that. Waives import duty for medical supplies, uses remdesivir to manage coronavirus patients, upgrades Kano testing capacity to 2,000 daily as one doctor dies. 32 others test positive. Police seal a mayor of Daura's palace over mass gathering. Royal father hospitalized. Banks comply with PTF directive, open more branches to customers. Lagos discharges 60 patients. Details of those stories can be found on page 4. And now, besides the photo story here, we have recovered $311 million Abuja loot for infrastructure jobs, says the presidency. Details is also on page 4. Now, 10th year remembrance, that's below the photograph. 10th year remembrance, PMB extols late President Yar'Adua's virtues. It's on page 2. Now, stockbroking firms trade 463.8 billion naira shares in 4 months. Captured on page 13. Now, Labour consumers fault federal government's electricity tariff hike deal with IMF. It's on page 10. Muhammadu Noah named new emir of Rano. Rano is in Kano. It's on page 7 of leadership newspaper.
Okay, we'll take a look also at the Nigerian pilot. Nigerian pilot immediately below the name flag says CJN stops court sittings pending issuance of new guidelines. Details on page 7. And Senate orders halt to 5G rollout, page 10. The lead story comes with a screamer. It says repressive. 4 riders, infectious disease bill is oppressive and illegal. That's according to CSOs. Oppressive and illegal is a bill. So the legality is not been determined. I'm just wondering, because if you say that it's illegal, that is still in the crucible. But regardless, let's look at the other 3 riders with regard to the infectious disease bill. It's compelling excessive powers violate human rights. That's according to Amnesty International. Bill toxic, worse than the poisonous chalice. That should be poisoned chalice. Huriwa. As Rep Speaker denies foreign inducement and ensures of public hearing. And then well below the photograph there, it says Northern governors to import testing kits from South Africa. That's according to Katsina Governor Masari. Details on page 12. Governor Duri assures NAF an operational license and flight commencement. Abacha loot of $311 million will be judiciously utilized. Federal government, details on page 5. And also federal government working to boost capacity for health emergencies. That's according to the SGF. Nigerians to pay higher electricity tariffs. Federal government promises IMF. And EFCC probes ex-NEMA DG over alleged 33 billion naira fraud. Nigerian oil and gas to decline by $26.5 billion. Again, according to the IMF. Details on page 29. Bayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start, as usual, by giving the update on the COVID-19. As at yesterday, 143 new cases of COVID-19 were recorded across the country. This brings the total now 2,950. 5 deaths were recorded, and unfortunately, we have lost 98 of our compatriots so far. The affected states are still 34 and the FCT. 2 states still do not have any infection. With yesterday's record, Lagos had 43, Kano 32, Zamfara is having 14, while the FCT is having 10. However, in Delta State, a running away COVID-19 patient who escaped has been tracked down in Enugu. Governor Ifeanyi Ogwuanyi gave instructions that the state task force should detect the patient, contain him, and return him to the Delta state where he is supposed to have been in isolation. And that was exactly what they did. So far, Enugu has 8 cases. 6 of them are active. We are lucky they don't have any deaths there yet. But there are now a lot of challenges that is ongoing. For instance, Lagos State is indicating that they have shortage of COVID-19 test equipment. The one they think is 99% effective is called the molecular testing kit. And the challenge is that middlemen are making it difficult for this to be acquired. And these are very expensive. That is why they couldn't resort to just testing anybody. You now have to have positive symptoms before they can risk testing you. So what the Lagos State government is trying to do now is to try and seek direct purchase from source. Unfortunately, it is worldwide scarce because everywhere in the world, everybody is looking for that molecular test kit. And that's why the other day, like Kirian suggested, we should give it a try to what Senegal has developed, the simple test kit that within an hour they are able to give you at least an indication of the results. Kano is also facing a challenge of inadequate manpower. And that is the brief that was provided to the Federal House of Representatives. Above all, the chairman of the Presidential Task Force has reminded all of us, you and I, that the level we are now demands responsibility for all of us. Responsibility from abiding by social distancing, as well as the hygienic advice that has been provided. And therefore, the better we comply with that, the more successful we are. He says that there is no need for, in fact, law enforcement agents to enforce any social distancing. We need to adopt it as a social responsibility. And he cites an example. Taiwan, next door neighbor to China, locked down immediately after there was a report about COVID-19 in Wuhan. And up to today, Taiwan has managed their case. They don't have even one single death. The total number of cases they have is less than 300. So, and this is because the people were disciplined when they gave them order of social distancing, wearing a mask, and restricting their movement. They complied.
You'll be surprised that many Nigerians are living in denial up to this moment that COVID-19 has landed almost in every state of this federation, and it really hurts, when you hear adults, still arguing whether COVID-19 exists or not. So in that circumstance, how will people adhere to social distancing? That's part of the problem. Convinced people are yet to be convinced that this is real. Many of us, and which is highly detrimental to the entire fight against COVID-19.
Yeah. Sadly, just 2 days before Ramadan commenced, there was a cleric, a scholar, who was citing an example that during the era of cholera, when people died, we saw people move to burial ground, we saw people coming back. Who has seen people moving to burial ground for COVID-19? And he blatantly said to his audience, it is a lie. And unless you tackle such persons, the impact they are having on several people is very grave, and many people are still in denial about COVID-19.
Well, it's unfortunate that this continues to play out, as Kirian and Bayo, as you have both indicated. But the consequences are there. You can see the numbers are climbing. We are only now just about 50 shy of 3,000 infections from the numbers that we are seeing. And unfortunately, 98 persons have died already. A number of other deaths are unaccounted for. Kano says he's still awaiting the outcome of his verbal autopsy on the mass deaths that were reported sometime in the past. It appears, though, that Jigawa also has to be on the spotlight now because Jigawa is next door to Kano. Yeah. And there are indications of a similar occurrence in and around parts of Hadejia and elsewhere in Jigawa. So what is happening in Jigawa? Are the authorities reporting faithfully to the NCDC and thereafter to the Presidential Task Force so that if they require any immediate assistance, that assistance can also be deployed? Because part of the delay in Kano seemed to have been either food dragging or just governance challenge. So I think these are some of the things. In Gombe, there are reports that some of those persons in isolation
were protesting.
On the street. They left the isolation center and they said on account of the shabby treatment that they were receiving.
Exactly. And this is becoming dangerous. It's becoming dangerous because in many states, persons who have coronavirus sneaked in unannounced, like the Delta incident, where the person was now found in Enugu. He must have traveled with the public transport. People were in those vehicles. He or she got into Enugu. Perhaps we bought the keke napep or bus or whatever it is to get to his destination. Meanwhile, he must have mingled with his family members, right, before he was detected. What does that mean? That, along the chain of his movement, perhaps some people may have been infected. That's why Enugu has recorded eight of them, for instance. So it is this illegal movement that is, accelerating the infection, and
and our testing capacity has also not been able to accommodate all of this. I'm sure if they ramped up testing, we might have many more numbers. And the danger we always pointed out on Good Morning Nigeria is, look, if you see the numbers of infection this time still under 3,000, let's be careful, because if there is a crisis, the hospital facilities cannot accommodate everybody, which is what we have seen in the advanced world. I mean, today, the reports indicate that the UK has now overtaken Italy as the highest number of persons who have died in both continental Europe as well as United Kingdom itself. Of course, the US leads the rest of the world with over 70,000 persons dead. These are advanced countries.
And this is why the Nigerian Center for Disease Control says the wider we test, the more sure we are about the number of incidences and cases that we have. And because of limitations about test facilities and personnel, that is why emphasis is on these measures that will check people willy-nilly subjecting themselves to exposure to persons who probably are contagious. And unless we take it seriously, it's going to be a big challenge. In Daura now, there has been a lockdown in Daura. This is a sequel to the fact that His Royal Highness, the Emir of Daura, has taken ill, and it is traced back to the incident case in Daura. You recall the doctor who fell ill and died. He was said to have visited the palace, and so presently, a lot of persons in the palace on the authority of the governor of the Katsina State are to be quarantined and are now to undergo tests.
See, I hope that this thing does not get out of hand, because we are just discussing it here, but the reality, the practical reality on ground is that it is spreading. It is spreading, and on a daily basis, we're having increase in the number of those who are affected. These are those who have been tested anyway, because there are persons who have not been tested. For instance, we talk about 2 states that have not gotten coronavirus, Kogi and Cross River State. Fine and good, but then if they track the way this spread is going, they should be able to embark on some tests somewhere. They should find a way to start testing, to be sure that people don't have that virus and who are hiding in that state.
Well, you see, the potentials are very high. For instance, take the example of Kogi. In spite of ban on interstate travels, people are still traveling from south to the north, from north to the south. And Kogi has borders with 10 states of the Federation. And therefore, there's no how you cross from north to south that you are not likely to pass through Kogi State. And that is the danger, because we are talking about community transmission. Cross River, for instance, shares border with Cameroon. The other day, the governor was so concerned that late in the night, he had to go himself to the border to check, to make sure that there were no interborder across transmission from Cameroon. Again, that is another potential danger. So if NCDC officials there, because they say that they will not allow NCDC officials into the state unless when they come, they will have to be quarantined for 14 days. So the Minister of Health now says that they will use the personnel in Cross River State to continue the test.
Yes.
So those are part of the challenges. If we do sufficient tests, we will find. But if, thanks to Providence, there is none, then we cannot insist that there must be if there's none. But we need to have sufficient tests to have all of us rest assured that there are no cases hiding somewhere.
Kiri, I was just wondering, I'm sorry to jump in here. We had the Commissioner for Health, Cross River, last week on Good Morning Nigeria, along with other guests when we're taking the reports from the states. That question was posed to her twice, whether the Cross River State government was still insisting on the NCDC officials coming from out of state to be quarantined for 14 days in the first instance. She didn't say a straight yes to that, and they said that, look, they were in search of assistance and support from the federal government.
But I think one other thing that she said is that if NCDC staff come to Cross River, that they should bring evidence of being a coronavirus free, before they can be allowed to.
Yeah, the other point, we're testing. One of the things you hear is that shortage or scarcity of reagents. Look, don't we have chemists in this country? Industrial chemists. Don't we also have chemical factories or industry? Must the reagents be imported?
Well, what are the reagents? What are their compositions? What are our laboratories here for? What are molecular scientists there for? This is a challenge for our university.
We can virtually find everything we need in this country, honestly speaking. It's just the will to believe in what we have, and in projecting what we have, and giving those professionals, the backing, the encouragement for them to get what we interviewed so many professors, virologists, chemists, and what have you, since this COVID-19 started, and they have made very salient points with respect to what is in the can, what they have, what they can offer. It depends on, look, let's see what you have, let's put it into practice, let's put it into test, okay? And just that, if there's no will to do that, we will keep importing and looking for something that we cannot even find.
Absolutely.
Every part of the world is looking for one thing or the other.
Thing, yes.
So how do you get it when you don't manufacture it?
That's right.
Is that a possibility?
Well, I'm sure that's some food for thought. Bayo Atoyebe would like to thank you for being around today. We're going to see you.
I wanted us to look at this.
We are pressed for time.
Exactly, but this is very important.
No,
cutting the cost of governance. And coming from the House of Representatives is very, very key. Right? It's very, very key. Because these are the areas where the monies are going into. Go ahead.
We'll take that up later in the week. Today is Wednesday. We still have Thursday and Friday. It's a continuing copy. We understand we're eating into the commercial time now because COVID-19 is important. Bayo Atoyebe, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you too.
See you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll get ahead with our item for discussion.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're glad to have you with us. And just before we explore our topic for discussion this morning on reaching out to the vulnerable during COVID-19, here is a background report by Abdulsalam Jibril.
The complaints so far we got in the call centers are being addressed. But we did Gwagwalada also, we did Kwali, we did Kuje, so we've concluded the FCT2, that's South Federal Constituency. Then we started the FCT1, which is Amakambwari from Bwari. Not without challenges. In Dutse there were obstructions. The first time we encountered people all out as if it's not a lockdown, like it's a campaign rally or sort, and then huge crowd, you can unimaginable huge crowd.
From the aged, the widows who received these items, it was all joy. The recipients thanked God for our intervention. Initially they thought it was intervention from the federal government. But we now said no, we don't have enough to give to everybody. This is just our widow's mite, a token from the BPE, an organization of government trying to support the effort of the federal government. From the little the staff put together, and as to the quality, we went to the Wuse market where we procured every item that we distributed.
Right now, have been able to reach Borno State, Adamawa, Yobe, Taraba, FCT, Lagos, and Ogun states. And we targeted a total of 27,000 households in these states. This is the first phase of our intervention. And the intervention was actually flagged off here in FCT.
Across the country, all churches to rise up to assist the needy people generally, whether they are Christians or Muslims or of other faith. Every needy person should be assisted. Therefore, from whatever savings or collections that churches have had, we've been encouraged to take care of the needy people around us.
The essence of Do Something initiative is to now look at post-COVID era, because we know businesses will crumble, there will be challenges, there will be anything. In partnership with our international donor who has been supporting us, MacArthur Foundation, we have started Do Something initiative that by the special grace of God, after this, we will also begin to take care of the challenges that we might be facing.
All right, now those were excerpts from our last conversation on reaching out to the vulnerable under the COVID-19 pandemic, put together there by our correspondent Abdul Salam Jibril. Today, of course, as my colleague already indicated, we are drilling further into the subject matter, and we have guests joining us via Skype from Lagos and also here in the studios. First, via Skype, we'd like to welcome Mr. Atedo Peterside. He's chairman, ANAP Foundation and COVID-19 think tank. Mr. Peterside, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning. Also there in Lagos via Skype is the chairman of the Nigerian National Polio Plus Committee and past District Governor of Rotary International, Mr. Tunji Funsho. Mr. Funsho, I'd like to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
And from our studio here in Abuja, we have the pleasure to welcome Nuhu Kwajafa. Nuhu Kwajafa is the coordinator, Global Initiative for Peace, Love and Care. It's a pleasure to welcome you.
Yeah, thank you. Morning.
All right. And also with us here in Abuja studio is Lillian Ike Foundation. Lillian Ike Foundation, the founder, is here with us, and she's Lillian Ike herself. Lillian, it's indeed a pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right.
All right. Once again, delight to have all our guests join us on this program. Let's begin this conversation from Lagos, where we earlier introduced our two guests, Dr. Tunji Funsho of Nigeria Polio Plus, as well as former District Governor of Rotary International. Now, tell us something. What, for you, was the trigger in trying to reach out to the vulnerable during this pandemic, especially in the 5-week period we were on a lockdown?
I think the first, Rotary has always been reaching out to the underprivileged people in our communities. And then to see images when the lockdown started, of people scrambling for palliatives that were being distributed, particularly by government agencies and also other volunteer agencies, was very heart-rending. And of course, our natural instincts are Rotarians was to reach out, and see what we can do to provide some palliatives for our people.
Well,
all right, Kieran. That's
okay. Yes, and let us also talk to our next guest via Skype, and that's not Rotary, ANAP Foundation. Sorry, ANAP Foundation. Please tell us, what was your foundation's initial reaction? When this lockdown started, as a foundation that caters for the vulnerable in society, generally speaking. But what was your first line of action, when the lockdown began in the area where your foundation is active?
Yes, let me explain that. My foundation established a think tank. That think tank is comprised of 18 persons drawn from all 6 geopolitical zones and with expertise in various fields, including medicine, e-commerce, economics, banking, finance, law, you name it. The idea is that this COVID-19 fight is not just a medical fight. Indeed, after the president made his first broadcast to the nation on COVID-19, I was a guest on a different TV station, and immediately after his broadcast, I came on and pointed out that everything the president said was correct. Everything he said in his very first broadcast was very helpful, except that he was silent on the needs of the unemployed and the underemployed. If you remember in his first speech, he mentioned the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja. And we knew immediately that it's easy to lock down rich people who have already accumulated food in their houses, who are ready for a lockdown. But when you try and lock down the very poor, who do not have the resources to buy food in abundance and hoard, the failure of the whole policy will arise when the underprivileged, the unemployed and the underemployed have to come out because of hunger. So our priority was to turn the whole satellite on the unemployed and the underemployed and point out that a lockdown will fail unless we take care of their needs. And even now, nationwide, all attempts at lockdown are vulnerable, largely based on how well you can cater for the needs of the unemployed and the underemployed. And please, let's use some rough numbers. If Nigeria has 180 million people, we know now that 80 million people are poor. That is, 80 million Nigerians are poor. And they are the weakest link in any attempt to lock down. Yes, we've encouraged and we work with all groups that are trying to bring out, palliatives, distribute, food, handouts, all sorts. But it is a race to take care of the needs of the 80 million people. So our whole focus is to direct policy, assist everybody, point out and cooperate with everybody in a bid to look after the needs of these 80 million Nigerians who are too poor to look after themselves. So that we are not the ones actually going out to give out loaves of bread. We cooperate with people doing such things. For instance, in a think tank, we have a member, Leostan Eke. His company, Xenox Computers, was giving out 7,000 meals. Now we also have other people like GiveFood.ng, giving out 1 million meals a week. So basically, the idea is that we are trying to rally everybody together to take care of the needs of the unemployed and the underemployed. So we are trying to mobilize and direct and encourage and muster and put attention where it belongs. That's our priority as a think tank.
Because of this, he should be able to explain certain things like he mentioned now, and because of the conversation. But one thing I'd like to point out is that he mentioned the omission by the president on issue of palliative, but I don't think that's totally right, because the federal government, including the FCT, have put plans in place for palliatives that have been issued, before the lockdown, took effect. And of course, we know that there are activities of sharing of palliatives across the nation, even as we speak.
Okay, Kira, your point is noted. I just wanted Mr. Atedo Peter's side to elaborate further on the mechanics of the operation. Now, he has indicated that his think tank, that's the think tank on COVID-19, hearing out from ANAB Foundation, isn't on the street, as it were, but providing ideas and collaborating with a number of other NGOs to be the ones who are covering the last mile, as it were. Tell us something. You have members of this think tank from the 6 geopolitical zones, as you have indicated. Now, the other NGOs that you are collaborating with, are they also spread throughout the 6 geopolitical zones? Did you find them ready on the ground and available to run with your ideas, as well as, of course, delivering whatever palliatives they had in stock or could source from other sources?
Make it very clear. Look, this is a battle. We are there to help anybody and everybody. We have given assistance, we have cooperated, we have guided LGA chairmen from all over the country, private sector groups. Look, the nation is at war. And please, for your colleague who mentioned earlier that the president, already had plans for the underprivileged. Let's use real numbers. In his speech, he mentioned they were giving support to 2.6 million Nigerian families. That is a lot of assistance. But I was giving you real numbers from the NBS. Nigeria has 80 million poor people. Nobody expects the federal government itself, that has a challenge with revenue, to be the one to suddenly start feeding 80 million Nigerians. Indeed, the first time I spoke on this, I explained that the primary responsibility for feeding 80 million poor Nigerians, should come from the 80 million richest Nigerians. If each of them feeds one poor person, we have solved the problem. The federal government can only do what it can do, and same with state governments. So if you take Nigerians and we say in total we are 180 million Nigerians, the bottom 80 are poor. Then the next 20 are people who can just about manage to feed themselves. It is the richest 80 million who have to all get up and join the task of feeding the bottom 80. And that's why I use the number that even if the richest 80, each person feeds one extra Nigerian who is poor, we have solved the problem. Government will do its own at the federal level, so will the state governments. But it is the 80 million richest Nigerians who must get up like they've been doing now and realize that nobody is going to come and help you feed the poor in your village. You have to get up and do it if you're a rich man in your village. So is that message we're carrying out, that don't wait for government. Do what you can do, and then government will do what they can do. So please, I'm just being very careful, because federal government has never come out and given you plans to feed 80 million poor Nigerians. They mentioned 2.6 million families at the very bottom.
The numbers. The Peter side is a retired banker, so
the numbers are giving fine and good. We've heard you, and as we move on, we'll return to you for some clarifications, based on what I've explained. Because Kingsley actually asked about the mechanics, the methodology with which you operate, coordinating your members in the 36 states of the Federation. But right now, let's pause you and come back to Abuja, where we have Lillian Ike, the founder of Lillian Ike Foundation. Let us know what your foundation is doing, the impact it is making with respect to the issue of palliative for the undertrodden in Nigeria in this circumstance we found ourselves. What have you been doing, and what is did you have tentacles across the nation, like Dr. Said told us?
Yes, thank you for that question. At the initial stage when this whole COVID-19 started, the first week of lockdown wasn't an easy one at all. We got to understand that most beneficiaries, these people are poor. About 80 million Nigerians are poor. In a situation you derive them, okay, with this lockdown, people no longer go out to search for their daily needs. The government needs to do a lot. We got to understand that most Nigerians, because they depend solely on daily needs for survival, now the government made it compulsory for every individual to stay at home. You telling an individual to stay at home, what are your measures in the issue of provision of palliatives? At the initial stage, when this thing started, government did not issue any palliative for the first week. We got to understand that people were actually dying of hunger. We got so many reports, so many text messages from the vulnerables. So the Lillian Ike Foundation had it.
How many persons died of hunger? You said many people were dying of hunger. Is that correct?
No, sir, you might not really understand how these people are. Most times, it depends on, you don't know, because we at the forefront will get messages from people. We get messages from people. We get people are seriously in need.
Do you investigate such messages?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
You can't just start sharing palliatives without having an evidence. First of all, the foundation goes there, check the person, or goes to the vicinity. Okay, now, what are the foundation doing? We have to share out food to people. At the initial stage, we started with cash transfers. That's the Lillian Ike Foundation started with cash transfers at the initial stage. We now going to understand that this money we are sending, people, they might not actually utilize this. the way they want. Now, the next second week, we started with food support projects. We started issuing it, and in a bid to caution the effect of the lockdown, we started with door-to-door food support.
Is that raw food or
raw food?
Okay.
Raw food, distribution of food items, Indomie, rice, raw food. We started with door-to-door food item support because these people, they need this food.
Okay, Lillian, thank you very much. I mean, we'll come back to you. Let's bring in now Nuhu Kwajafa, who is the coordinator of Global Initiative for Peace, Love and Care. Tell us what your own trigger was for intervening in terms of providing palliatives or other ideas during this coronavirus pandemic.
Okay, for me, when the federal government decided to lock down the whole country concerning this coronavirus issue, for me, I believe that it is not the sole responsibility of the government to support all Nigerians. We as Nigerians, we are the government. Without us, they can govern nobody. So in our own strategy, we say, listen, each Nigerian touch a life, show love to the needy. Forget about government. Government is overwhelmed. So many issues is going on with the government right now. Government is overwhelmed. So what we decided to do, okay, listen, in the last 14 years of our existence, we have a data of vulnerable families, vulnerable widows, vulnerable kids that can't afford to even go to school. So right now, you have an issue of how do they fend for themselves. So we created what you call the Collective Responsibility Initiative. Every Nigerian, do your bit. Look around you, look around your neighbor. You don't really need to go far. Do your bit. But you think the most important thing, again, Nigerians fail to understand is it's not all about the palliatives. You're giving them food, you're giving them toiletries, beverages, but the major sign of concern is how are they protected? How many of them are wearing the mask? How many of them are wearing the gloves? How many of them are having sanitizers? How many of them know how many of them know the level of impact without them protecting themselves this coronavirus will impact? Because listen, 3 weeks ago I went to Lugbe to rescue a 12-year-old girl that was being maltreated by her auntie. But you know what? When I went to Lugbe, it was business as usual. I thought there was no lockdown in Nigeria then. Everywhere, everybody, Okada man, Danvo drivers, everybody moving up and down. So, we like it or not, we might be protected, we might be doing okay. The whole elites are okay, maybe the middle class are okay. But you know what? I tell you the truth. If the masses, people living in remote areas, talking about Lugbe, Maraba, Nyanya, Gishiri, are not protected, we have done nothing. We are still back to square one. So right now, our major campaign right now is we want to give 1 million masks to vulnerable Nigerians. As we are speaking today, this morning, by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we're giving 1,000 masks already.
Yeah.
With the virus. So it's not about, because you have to be alive to eat. You have to be healthy to eat. So to me, the palliative, yeah, everybody have done well with the palliative, but we need to protect them because the government has given a mandate that every Nigerian must wear a mask. Today in Nigeria, it's so sad that a lot of Nigerians capitalize on the situation. They want to make money out of it.
Yeah.
That is it. Today, I have a friend in the U.S. that by next week they want to give up to 500,000 masks for free of charge. It can't happen in Nigeria. It can't. So we think our mindset need to change. Money is not everything because you have to be alive to spend the money.
Okay.
No, why would you say it can't happen in Nigeria? I mean, we've had donors who have pledged, and some have actually released millions of naira. So how much is a mask that 500,000 cannot be obliged to other Nigerians?
Yeah,
I think that Nigerians have been generous.
No. The good thing about it, Nigerians are generous. But you see, the problem again is 80% of the masks you see in Nigeria, and most of them are locally made here. Today you go to the market now, the rubber band they use for the mask, before a roll used to be about 3,500, today a roll now is about 7,000 to 10,000 naira because the man who is selling it believes that right now coronavirus is the goose that is laying a golden egg.
Let me ask you this because there's something so interesting. You know, your foundation has been there for 14 years.
Yeah.
So you have been accustomed to issues of helping the needy.
Yeah.
You know, for 14 years. Now that we have COVID-19, you seem to have touched your program of activities. You know, perhaps expanding your horizon,
Yeah.
right? And palliative is inclusive. Now, do you work with any other foundation, with respect to, what you're doing? Now, yours is not just palliative. Yours is palliative plus. Plus, in the sense that you're bringing in safety measures and what provision of, hygienic infrastructure, if you like, and what have you. And again, you said your friend in the U.S., an individual, provided 5,000 or so masks or so. Are you also winning some of your friends in Nigeria to do the same?
No, yeah, we're doing that's what we're doing. That's the reason why we plan out right now. By from today now, every week we'll be giving out 1,000 masks out to people. We have various NGOs that we're collaborating with because we can't be everywhere. We have people in Lagos, we have people in Abuja, we have people in Enugu. We all a lot of volunteers. The good thing about it, I'll give credit to Nigerians. We have good people in Nigeria that have a good heart who want to give back to people. But the problem is probably they don't know how to do it. So we created a platform, a forum. I said, listen. You don't have to be in Abuja, but collectively, that will call it CR, Collective Responsibility Initiative. Because, I'll give you a typical example now. In the last 14 years now, because majorly our NGO have been in a campaign for healthcare. In the last 14 years now, using the Collective Responsibility Initiative, we'll be able to raise over $5 million for children that can't pay medical bills. Right now, it's so sad that because of the coronavirus, we have about 15 kids who are supposed to go to the US, Dubai for surgeries, but they can't even move out of Nigeria. We have to continue praying to God. Let the virus pandemic, go down so that at least let travel, the international flights start going. Because what do we do? Are we going to keep losing people every day?
Okay, thank you very much, Nuhu Kwajafa. We'll come back to you. Let's return to Dr. Tunji Funsho via Skype in Lagos. Tell us, what has been your intervention strategy in terms of either palliatives or other forms of assistance during this pandemic?
Well, we look at palliatives, from a few fronts. I know generally, the images you see of people who are hungry tends to evoke the emotions of trying to give them food. We have done that and we continue to do that. We started in Lagos. We have done in Oyo State,
appears to be a freeze. A freeze from his Skype. I don't know.
We're going to bring in our next guest on via Skype, and for him to also Peter Side, Dr. Peter Side, please want to bring you back, and I'd like you to speak to the issue of the government palliatives that are presently in place. Since you have a well-organized think tank group that are scattered all over the country, you must have information regarding what government at the subnational level are also doing to ensure that Nigerians get this palliative. So what are you getting, and what other contribution are you making in terms of collaboration with government agencies or even individuals or other organizations to see whether your think tank strategy is working?
Let me just explain that by training, I'm an economist, and I have a rough idea of the federal government's finances and the state government finances today. And as we all know, one of the things that COVID-19 has done is at the same time that it came to us with the medical challenge, it also came to us with an economic challenge, in the sense that because of no movement globally, no more air travel, no more travel generally, the demand for fuel, aviation, fuel, all kinds of petrol demand has collapsed. So the price of oil collapsed. The price of oil collapse meant that at the time when Nigeria is facing a medical challenge, serious medical challenge, a pandemic, our revenue stream, the largest source of revenue for the country, 60%, also collapsed. So realizing that, knowing that this government, federal and state, indeed, I can tell you that next month, by the time the state governments come to share revenue, many of them will be alarmed by what they will receive. So please, let us understand that we're dealing with a government sector that is severely challenged in terms of revenue, that is going and borrowing from the IMF. They will borrow from anybody that would lend them money at this time. And the bulk of that money has to come from agencies like the IMF, ADB, Afrexim, because private sector will not lend Nigeria money at this time because they will be scared whether we can pay back. So I want to put it on the macro framework to explain to you that the government does not have that much money. Even when we talk about palliatives and fiscal incentives and all that, we're talking about the government that was borrowing even before a crisis came. Now a crisis is here on the medical front. Our revenues too have collapsed because of the price of oil. So that's why our focus has been more like let the wealthy Nigerians rise up to a challenge. That's the reason why we're cooperating with everybody else. Even all over the world, it is not always true that you are relying on government to look after the poorest of the poor in an emergency. And please, we have seen evidence of this across the nation. I'm from Rivers State. I can tell you that in my father's place, there are voluntary groups who have given them money. In my mother's place, a different location, the same is going. All the elite all over the country are rising up to do fundraising, to look after the poor in their own communities. This trend has to continue nationwide. It's a national emergency. So I'm sorry, I'm almost refusing to answer your question because I don't want to fall into the trap of thinking it's government and government to get us out of this mess. It is not government that will solve the problem of feeding 80 million Nigerians. I keep on stressing that. It is the wealthy Nigerians and they are rising up to the challenge. I hate to name names, but I'm sure you've seen the likes of BUA Foundation, Aliko Dangote Foundation. Even my foundation, we partner with Aliko Dangote Foundation. We partner with Ford Foundation from the USA. These are all groups who have understood that the plight of the poor Nigerians cannot, I repeat, cannot be left to government alone at this time. Because if it's left to government alone, the government will fail. The government will fail because any government, given this low level of resources to look after 180 million people, will fail. So let's get that very clear in our minds. Government's priority is to help with their task force, to set direction, to mobilize and do what they can. The rest of us, that's why whenever I call for an elite consensus, people think I mean by elite the rich and wealthy. No. Those who have ideas in every community have to get together and mobilize and organize themselves. When you organize yourself, different groups can come and give you money. Please, it's very important that we send that message home. Every state in Nigeria, there are elites in those states who can organize themselves, create funds, reach out programs, organize for crowdfunding. People want to give you money, but they can only find you in Kogi or in Taraba or in Rivers or somewhere if you have organized yourself in a way that they can send handouts to you. Until you organize yourself, it's difficult for a rich person in Lagos or Abuja to come and contribute in Bono or Kebbi or even in River States. So it's about organization, and it's coming. Almost every LGA slowly will have well-organized groups that can receive assistance. That has to be the priority. So please, let's downplay this constant, aim, hope that governments will somehow be the one to solve this problem. They have to work closely with the private sector.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atedo Peters. I will return to you. I want to get back to Dr. Tunji Funsho. Dr. Tunji Funsho, I mean, you were on explaining the strategy for your own intervention against the background of the philosophical underpinning that Mr. Atedo Peters has outlined. Could you then take off from where we lost you when there was a freeze on your Skype connection?
Very much. Yes, I think I want to underscore the fact that the responsibility is much, much larger than any government. I mean, we all have seen the long queues of people in the United States, queuing for hours to get supplies from food banks. And that's an environment where people have handouts from government, through their social security system. So everybody needs to pitch in. And what we have done, Rotary is a very unique organization. We are more than 100 years old. And we are present in virtually every state with our about 7,000 strong members. All we need to do is to, come together and decide this is, the intervention we want to do. And it's okay to give people food. We've been down earlier in several states. But also, like they always say, you cannot shave a man's head in his absence. You need to ensure that people stay well, as Mr. Peterside has said, to enjoy these palliatives. And one of the very important things that we have seen is that the lockdown does not work in satellite towns, in peripheral areas, be it Lagos, be it Abuja, be it Ibadan, be it Abuja. The condition of living makes it difficult for a sizable proportion of our population to be able to do that. So food is good, but also the wearing of masks. I'm happy, that one of the members, of this team has mentioned the issue of masks. There is no use giving people masks if they don't understand the fundamental. With hawkers of masks in the markets on the roadside, giving masks for people to try out and return it to the bag. We have seen taxi drivers, because they want to ensure that they have a good payload, keeping closed masks. And if a passenger comes without a mask, they give him a mask. When he drops, they'll take it back and give it to the next passenger. So we have an important role to play in educating people, for them to understand the need for them, to protect themselves. It is only when they are well that they're going to eat. So we make palliatives available, but at the same time, we want to ensure that the people understand why they are being asked what they've been told to do in terms of, social distances and wearing masks. Wearing masks is only useful if you use it properly. If you use it wrongly, it's an absolute waste of money and time. So we are providing masks also, but we're going to support that with ensuring that, at every venue that we're giving out masks, people are educated in the art of using a mask, whether it is the surgical mask or whether it's a cloth mask. And I want to mention here, as a physician, people should discount, this information going around the social media, that masks can suffocate you and make you faint. There is no basis for that, whatsoever. Masks have been used, for ages by surgeons who operate in theaters. And indeed, until recently, we're using non-disposable masks. We're using closed masks. And surgeons stand on their feet for hours doing surgery. And I can't recall any surgeon who has collapsed, because they were inhaling what they claim to be, carbon dioxide. The body has a mechanism that makes sure you breathe. Once the carbon dioxide in your lungs and your blood goes up, it forces you to take a deep breath. That is why sometimes you hear people making sighs when they have either been involved in an activity that does not make them breathe deeply enough. Suddenly you hear, that is the body trying to make you take a deep breath so that you pump out the excess amount of carbon dioxide that have remained stagnant in your lungs. So that there's no truth in that whatsoever. So we need to educate our people to understand why they are being told to do what they're doing. And this is where Rotary also is excelling, because we're present in every community and we make sure that at every point in time we educate people as to the needs of what they really need to do. Only we to 80 million people who are poor. That may be the case. But we also realize that we have a pretty good sociocultural system, where younger people support their old people. There's a popular, prayer in Yoruba that they said, which translates to the fact that your children will look after you in your old age. So we're still lucky to have that social connection, in our family system, which in some areas blunts, this effect of the COVID-19 making it difficult for people to earn a living. I also want to, mention the fact, that it is important for everyone to find a way of volunteering. As Mr. Pisaza has said, government cannot reach all these 80 million people in this short space of time. And if every one of us who is endowed enough can volunteer to do something, maybe just giving even 500 naira a day will make a huge difference to some members of our community when you know their level of poverty rate. There are some Nigerians that have never handled a 500 naira note in all their lives, and they are adults, because that is the level of their poverty. So a little in these times goes a long way. And we can volunteer, to do things for people who cannot afford to do it for themselves, particularly, old people. So everybody has something they can give. Even the so-called poor people we're talking about can give something to somebody else that may not be cash. It may be running errands, for an old person or for a disabled person. It can be soliciting information that, they will find useful for themselves, or just generally volunteer in their community if they're enlightened, to educate them about the things we're talking about, why the social distances is important, how to wear masks, apart from giving the palliatives we spoke about.
Dr. Tunji Ofunsho, I want to remain with you now that we still have a clear signal from where you are via Skype. Rotary International is an established international organization for several years, as you mentioned, and you have this structure by which you reach out to certain communities, especially those in the peripheral areas, as you also indicated earlier on. Are you collaborating with any other either foundation or club or government, as the case may be? Because if you collaborate, it will expand your horizon in terms of reach to those vulnerable people, not just because of palliative, but of course in terms of education that you mentioned, that people need to be, re-educated on how to adjust to COVID-19. So, and using Rotary International will be of a great advantage to this nation. So, do you have any kind of synergy with any other organization, either international or local?
We're just working on that because we want to leverage on some of the legacies of our polio eradication initiative. With polio, we have a group called Journalists Against Polio. As I mentioned earlier, information and education is very, very vital. We have a large number of Rotarians who could do the outreaches, but we need to educate people. And the media are a very important tool in this process of education. So we are in the process of, putting together a coalition of journalists against COVID, who will join us at every level to help us get this to understand why they are being told to do certain things to safeguard their health and their lives in the long term. So that is the only one we're doing at this current point in time.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Funsho. I will return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's come back to our Abuja studios. Nuhu Kwajafa, tell us something. How did you stake out your area of intervention? I mean, you couldn't possibly be in 774 local governments in the country. So how did you map out where, say, this is where we're going to intervene? And in doing so, what has been your experience with those who are the receivers of your intervention?
Okay, first of all, like his Ralph said, we can't be everywhere at the same time. So we have other NGOs that we collaborate with, and we have a lot of volunteers all over Nigeria that we work together with. There are some that palliative can't get to them, so you have to be monetary. You have to send them money, transfer, and direct. But you see, something I realized with the beneficiaries, lack of information. They're not really informed with what is going on. Most of them don't really believe that the coronavirus exists. They call it probably the hoax, probably is coming from Europe. They're trying to reduce the number of Nigerians. So we for me, even giving the palliative and the mask is not really important. It's just the awareness. If they are well informed, it's like today. The taxi driver or the Danfo driver or the Okada man knows about HIV. He goes out of his way during the campaign, during the time of NACA, campaigning about buying condom and the rest. And everybody is well aware now. Taxi man who cannot even speak English or all he knows is the Yoruba or Hausa or Igbo, but he knows the implication of having intercourse without condom, and he knows that this is HIV is real. So, but you see, the coronavirus came in impromptu. Nobody was ready for it. Government became overwhelmed. Even the US of A, that we believe that they happen to be the world power today, no single shot of one bullet has been shot, but over 60,000 people have died. To tell you that information is richer than even the palliative. So, during our course of campaigns, giving materials and giving support to the world, we found that most of them are not really well informed. You know what? The reason why I cry every day is because what I think about is the 150,000 orphan children in IDP camps in Borno State.
Yeah.
Who don't even know what is going on. Who don't even believe what is going on. What happens to them?
Listen, are we paying a price somehow, let's say in the short term, considering some of the challenges that have manifested? Are we paying a price for insufficient investment in education?
Yes, I agree. Education and healthcare.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, Lillian, let's bring you in again. You told us how you started, by, sending money through the banks to some persons, and then in the second stanza, you decided to be sharing food from door to door. How do you select your area of focus, for instance? How spread is your foundation? Because if you're doing this, it means that elsewhere, it's also going on. Tell us, and also your experience concerning people being well informed about the virus, not just the palliative, but for them to have a basic understanding of what we are in.
Yeah, starting from your first question, most times the individuals now, they are not well educated when it comes to this issue of COVID-19. As I'm still talking to you, some people still don't believe that this COVID-19 exists. You get to a particular vicinity or community to share palliatives. They are angry. Some of our experience, they are angry seeing you. They think you are from federal government. Like, what do you want? What do you have for us? We have to now sensitize them. We are not from federal government. Please, we came in peace. We want to share this palliatives.
The federal government is not at war with them, so.
That's what I am saying. They don't want to know. They don't want to know because they are already angry. They are agitated that these things are not coming at the right time. So you have to sensitize them. Now, we are not only sensitizing them, you also have to go an extra mile in telling them what this COVID-19 is all about. At some point, some of them will be like, you don't know what you're talking about. We are not in support. The federal government wants to use this avenue to siphon funds. That is our experience. So now in the issue of food distribution, we are cut across the 36 states. Most times we can't be everywhere. We have volunteers, individuals that can do this. Now we collaborate with individuals also. We have partners. We partner with some foundations in the aspect of food distribution. So now this is no longer what government can do, but what you as an individual, what can you do for the government? Everybody, for us to fight this pandemic, all hands must be on deck for us to fight this. It's no longer limited to the federal government alone or to the state government alone. We must fight it together.
I want to ask you both in the studios here. I mean, considering the fact that as part of your strategic intervention, you are out there in the field and looking at the aspect of strategic public information management, relating therefore to behavior change. If you look at the communication order in the world today, it is said that the world is a global village. What, in your opinion, informs the continuing resistance by some of the communities you visited to the fact that, look, coronavirus exists, And that even in the advanced world, people are dying. There are visuals of mass burials in New York, for instance, of hospital spaces all cramped up, and the number of deaths in Italy, the UK, and around. So why has it been difficult for this to cascade down to them, for them to know that this thing is a killer? It's killing people elsewhere, and if it gets here, it might be a catastrophic experience.
You see, a lot of Nigerians are living in denial. 80% of the vulnerable people have no access to DSTV or NTA or even smartphones. All their phone does is phone call and text, not even camera. So the information never gets to them. They don't know what is going on. All they keep hearing, okay, coronavirus, this, coronavirus, that on radio, and that is it. And the moment one person comes out with a story like it's a government conspiracy, then it flies like wildfire. That's the reason why I keep saying, I said, listen, even when I see people on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, giving, we're giving a palliative, or we're looking for, that's what a lot of Nigerian celebrities do. They think, you're good, we're giving 20,000 naira to 50 people, 100 people. We are not giving it to get more followership, because the real beneficiary, the real people that need this money don't have smartphones to even be on Instagram or Twitter.
To be able to watch anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing is, we need opinion leaders to do this now. Some of these communities, they have opinion leaders. They have the imams, they have the chiefs. They still need to do their work. Like Mr. Nuhu said, these people, they don't have smartphones, neither do they have DSTV. So you, as an opinion leader, you have to bring people together. Your community, you bring them together, sensitize them, let them know the importance of this COVID-19. Let them know that they need to be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's no longer about the phone. Like getting to, it's just like the distribution of these palliatives. Someone comes to phone and tell you he or she is hungry. I tell them, for you to have data to buy, for you to have a data to send a message, that means you can even afford food. There are some indigents that can't afford this food. These are the people the foundation are looking out for.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is a very important aspect of the fight against COVID-19, provision of palliatives, sensitization, believability in terms of people who don't want to listen to what government is saying. And here we are with the challenge. Change is one phenomenon that's so difficult for people to accept, but yet it is very consistent. And the world is talking about new normal. That means you have to do things differently for us to exist. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we get back, we'll be concluding our conversation on the provision of palliatives on COVID-19.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, we have a number of tweets that have come in from our viewers, so we'll quickly go through those tweets and then return to our guests. Wadamasi Haruna Adamu says, in satellite towns of the Federal Capital Territory, we have received the palliatives from the minister. I wish to appeal to the area council chairman as a matter of urgency to send theirs as support to the earlier palliatives received from the minister. May God heal the affected ones and bring an end to this pandemic. The local governments, that's to say the area councils, are also part of what the FCT is doing. So
Exactly.
what specific palliatives now do you want from the area council chairman? We had the AMAC chairman here with us last week.
All right. Festus Akimbe, but I think the person may have been talking about local government areas outside the FCT. We have council areas, it's not several of them, what are they doing?
No, he was just specific here. He said, I wish to appeal to the area council chairman. There are 6 of them.
Okay, area in Abuja here.
6
right.
of them in the FCT.
All right.
Yeah.
Festus Akimbe says the outbreak of COVID-19 currently being experienced around the globe is unprecedented, and reaching the vulnerable with palliatives is not the responsibility of government alone. Everyone needs to work together to contribute to the health and well-being of the vulnerable in our country.
Among Bola Babs, as of today, how many vulnerable persons have been reached? Can we have up-to-date data of who has received what in the last 6 weeks? Not beneficiaries of conditional cash transfer who had been captured long before the COVID-19 pandemic. How about people affected by the pandemic?
Mike Ayakwo, the vulnerable, the handicapped, people living with disabilities, people that are sick, pregnant women, etc., are the worst victims of COVID-19, we must empathize with this community by showing them love, reaching out to them intermittently to provide support.
Law Alpha C, transparency and thoroughness are needed to reasonably reach the vulnerable, as the poorest of the poor are complaining that the palliatives are insufficient, thereby flouting the lockdown rules.
Now, Nicholas Omoko, the COVID-19 has really opened the eyes of the government and the masses to know that we lack planning. After this tribulation, we now have a second chance to build our hospitals, pharmaceuticals, research, manpower, tools, and database of citizens. I agree with you totally.
Dele Jack Solomon, now we implore the federal and state governments to ensure the rights to food, shelter, and other basic necessities for Nigerians. People losing jobs or income during the pandemic should also be protected. This is because the economic assistance that the government has announced in response to the virus so far stands a risk of excluding the country's poorest and most vulnerable.
Edith Izu Obano, it is said that better pay the cook than the doctor. Please, federal government, Nigerians need a viable social welfare scheme. God bless Nigeria.
Akeju Olagbajo, the fundamental mistake that many palliative providers are making is to ask the vulnerable to come out to collect instead of taking the palliatives to the doorsteps of the vulnerable.
All right, Ecos Bastin, he says, I'd like to thank my friend there, Nuhu, your guest. If there's anyone I believe is genuinely caring for the vulnerable, is him. In this COVID-19 fight, let there be enlightenment and then enforcement in the satellite towns. They are the weak link in the daily rising cases in Nigeria.
Onyebuchi Ezenwa tweets, I really thank the Nigerian Television Authority, at least for being the mouthpiece of poor Nigerians. Government should do everything possible to alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians. So those are the twists we can accommodate at this time. Kirian, I want us to return to Mr. Atedo Peterside, still with us via Skype from Lagos. Mr. Peterside, earlier, as part of your response to our questions, you talked about galvanizing elite consensus. And I'm sure you have a fair gauge already of how the elite that you have had to interact with in the course of the operation of your think tank on COVID-19. How well is the elite being galvanized in this sense? And are we now likely to see a new normal in terms of philanthropy coming from the elite class, which has often been blamed for the country's problem anyway?
Thank you for that question. But I think I would first like to comment a bit on what you were saying earlier about the need for communications. You see, this COVID-19 fight has three pillars. One is medical, two is governance, and three is communications. So it is true when you hear people say that they are surprised that some Nigerians still appear ignorant or some are in denial. That is expected. It was the case everywhere in the world. And let's get it very straight. In Nigeria, we began late in communication. I was on national TV on 18th of March, and I used the expression social distancing. Many people who are educated, highly educated, told me that that was the first time they heard about social distancing. That was 18th of March. Now, at that time, even why did I jump on national TV? Because I realized there was a vacuum. And what the whole world was talking about in Nigeria was still largely absent. But between 18th of March and today, even as I watch all the jingles on your TV and so on, we've come a long way. But we've come a long way, but we began late. There's a reason why the governor of New York is on TV every single day, almost, communicating with his people in New York. It's not just one broadcast. He's there every single day. Communication has to be almost 24/7 before you convince everybody, including the doubting Thomases. Now, to come back to your issue of elite consensus, why do I mention elite consensus? That is taking it beyond government, because sadly in Nigeria, we have a situation where there are very few credible voices. If somebody in government has been lying to Nigerians all the time, and he now comes out to talk about COVID-19, they won't believe him. You have to carry this message beyond just government spokespersons. So when you talk about elite consensus, be it your pastor, be it your imam, be it your business partner, businessmen, journalists, writers, actors, actresses, if all these people buy into the concept of social and of social distancing, physical distancing, and they're all preaching the same message, then Nigerians will follow. It's not something that a governor can do. And please, sadly, even at this time, one or two governors in Nigeria sound as if they're in denial. Any governor that is trying to kid himself that in his own state he does not have COVID-19, let me just tell you, he's in denial. You don't have COVID-19 because your state is unable to carry out tests. COVID-19 is a pandemic. Pandemic means it can and should get to every single part of the globe. Why do you think that your own state is unique or is different? That is ignorance. So now the point I'm making is that in some states as well, I don't want to name names, even when a governor was a bit errant, it was the elite that got together and pulled him in the right direction. For goodness sake, even in the US, didn't we hear Donald Trump initially saying that this whole COVID-19 was a hoax, something that the Democrats created and the media? Within a short time, those in his party engaged him, the elite in his party engaged him and dragged him all the way back to come and appear on TV every day. Now, so when I talk about the consensus, I'm saying that it then empowers government to take the right actions. I mean, I'll give you an example. When the government said close down all the flights coming into Nigeria from overseas, what if I tell you that even before the government did so, there was already something like an elite consensus, because the elite had finally understood and agreed that those flights were bringing in the virus. So that what the government was doing was almost responding to people calling them and saying, close those flights, stop those flights, because at the time we had 260 flights coming to Nigeria every week. And they were basically flights, the bulk of them were from Europe, bringing in the virus. So as soon as the elite all realized that that was the priority, it became easy for government to carry out the action. Same too with lockdown. No government can just wake up one day, surprise the nation and say lockdown. There must have been a mood created. The elite, all saying that we have to now respond by a lockdown. That makes it easy for government to get up and announce a lockdown. By the time President Buhari came on TV and mentioned lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja, guess what? Many of us had been shouting for a lockdown. Even the expression lockdown had become familiar. So he was using language that was already in the public space. Same with social distancing. We had been on TV already calling for distancing. So a president or a governor is simply using the same language that the elite around him are using to appeal to the populace that this is a new direction. So that goal of educating every Nigerian also goes beyond government. If you go down to every little village, there are people that they look up to. And if those that they look up to tell them that it's time now to lead a new life, a new normal, people will follow, especially if those who are talking are people who have credibility. Not only people who only show up once in 4 years to ask for votes and make promises which they never keep. So the point I'm making is that it has to be a consensus where all of us are agreeing. Like in this studio, it sounds as if all of us in this studio agree on social distancing. All of us in this studio agree on helping the poor, those who cannot fend for themselves. Once we have that kind of consensus, government will follow us. Government must follow us because they have no choice. So the point I'm making is that it's a movement that we're creating. And in this studio alone, we're speaking with one voice. And so government will follow that voice. So please.
Have always been blamed, globally. You talked about Trump. He also said that there is a Chinese virus. It will be like miracle. It will disappear all of a sudden and stuff like that. He is an elite, as the American president. And now down here in Nigeria, you have also talked about the elite and the impact that they have made in terms of decisions to close the aviation industry and what have you. But we also know that some elite, in Nigeria who caught the coronavirus didn't show up at their isolation center. Some decided to stay in their homes and be managed by their individual doctors, which was against the norms as it concerns the fight against the coronavirus. Now, talking about elite consensus, which my colleague raised, it is very pertinent, and I want to bring in Dr. Tunji Fonsho. Briefly tell us, because Rotary International is in a good position to galvanize the elite of the society, because it's done that for over 100 years. As we wind down this edition of the program, let us know what Rotary International is doing with respect to galvanizing elites to take a particular direction in the fight against the coronavirus.
A sizable membership of Rotary clubs, in the basic definition of Nigeria, elitists. So they're basically reasonably educated.
All right. Dr. Funsho, again, we seem to, all right.
And the
Sorry, your Skype connection is freezing one more time. I just want, Mr. Atedo Peterside, let's get your closing thoughts on this, but I hope I can extract that in just a couple of sentences from you. What we are dealing with is apparently short-term. We are facing immediate consequences of the lockdown and so on and so forth. But as you very well know, there are other medium to long-term consequences. The economic cost of this pandemic. A number of businesses worldwide have been heavily impacted, and here in Nigeria also heavily impacted. In other words, there's likely to be trouble ahead for us here in Nigeria. You already talked about the sharp decline in government finances. So we are likely to have more vulnerable people going forward, job losses and so on and so forth. How can we begin to think of tackling that before there is a landfall of those consequences?
Thank you. I will answer that by pointing out that a lot depends on what horizon you see. Some of us are frightened. The group I belong to, the think tank, we were pointing out that at least this is a marathon. We could be in this frame of mind, in this way of living for the next 15 to 18 months. So we have to be careful that any lockdown that we are carrying out can be sustained. If a lockdown is total 100% and too severe, it will fail. It will fail because it will completely destroy the economy at the same time. So for a lockdown to be sustained or over 15 months or 18 months, you must have moved to what we call an intelligent lockdown, which is what we're trying to do now in Lagos, Abuja, allowing people to come out but respect social distancing and begin to carry out some minimal activities in the economy. You cannot lock down an economy for 15 months. It's impossible. So we're saying that we have to move to a new phase of an intelligent lockdown where we combine physical distancing with some economic activity. That is the type of lockdown that can be sustained for 15 months or 18 months. So that's my message, that these severe lockdowns must slowly evolve or transmutate into a modified form of lockdown, which is called an intelligent lockdown in a country like Holland, where people can go about doing their businesses as best they can while respecting the rules of social distancing and physical distancing. I saw a very encouraging photograph of a market in Mbaise in Imo State. All the traders were each one was about 2 meters apart from their neighbor. That is the kind of model we have to move to. That can be sustained indefinitely.
Thank you indeed. We just hope and pray so. because we have other communities that may not be as organized as MBC, but your message is quite clear and understandable. Now in the U.S., many states are opening, over 40 states have opened up with what you call intelligent reopening, where you have to be mindful of all the measures put in place in this fight. Let's return to Abuja as we round off this program. Now, your final thoughts, Nuhu. You have been commended by one of our persons that sent in a message via our Twitter handle. What are the things you think you're doing differently? Since 14 years you've been on this issue of touching people's lives, because of course your T-shirt is supporting that, touching the lives of the people. With respect to COVID-19, just as you round off.
COVID-19 is one of our biggest challenges in this kind of in social service work in community work, because 80% of our work has been healthcare. We raise money for sick children that can't pay medical bills, children that their parents are abandoned kids. Like when the isolation center was set up in Gogolada Specialists, and then we had almost about 4 to 5 children on admission, and so we just needed to see how we can get those kids out of it, because the moment a sick child is in a vicinity where you have people with COVID-19, their immune system is very low. So this is one of the most difficult times in my life as a social worker, because I've never seen anything like this before, and this is an eye-opener. So whatever has happened today, it will teach us for tomorrow, for a better tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much, Nuhu Kwajafa, Coordinator, Global Initiative for Peace, Love and Care. We appreciate you being with us for this conversation. Our deep thanks also to Lilian Ike of Lilian Ike Foundation. Our appreciation for your being part of the conversation. From Lagos, we were joined via Skype, Dr. Tunji Funshaw, who is the chairman of the Nigeria National Polio Plus Committee and also a past district governor, Rotary International. Dr. Funshaw, sorry, we had some glitches with your Skype connection, but regardless, we appreciate your comments. And last but not the least, deep thanks to Atedo Peterside, Chairman, ANAP Foundation and COVID-19 think tank. Gentlemen, once again, we appreciate you for being with us. And so that's been our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, remember, stay safe. And staying safe means observing personal hygiene rules and physical distancing. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirin Umayo. Have a great day.